Welcome to Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. And as you know, I am now at the end of a series that I have been doing on contentment. And this series originated, George and I were in prayer early one morning, and I was just thanking God, Lord, I am so content. I thank you for contentment. And God spoke. That was my next sermon series. He said, ask George what each letter means in the word contentment. And I have been preaching for the last few weeks dealing with just contentment. C was care, O opinion, N new, T time, E excessive, N neighbor, T totality, M measure, E exception, and the last message, N for nothing. And today is the final message. And you can go to brothersoftheword.com, listen to the entire series absolutely free of charge. And T, the word George said for T is tacit, T-A-C-I-T. Now, when he said this word, to be honest about it, I'd heard it, but I didn't know what it meant. I'm sure that I don't mean to impinge on anyone's intelligence or your grammatical or syntax or vocabulary skills. I'm sure all of you all know what it means. But when I heard it, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what it meant. I'd heard it, but I had to go look it up. Tacit means basically something that is implied without speaking it. It is something that you understand without it being spoken. That is what tacit means. And I'm going to read, opening up for the scripture today, John 13:28, the New Living Translation. You don't have to turn there because it's actually the first time I've used the scripture that's opposite. And here it's talking about what Jesus had just said. And John 13:28 says, none of the others at the table knew what Jesus meant. So here was a case when Jesus actually said something and they didn't know what it meant. Tacit is the opposite of that. When you don't even say something and folk know what it means. That's the definition of tacit. And I want to ask you the question, do people know that you are content without you telling them? And that's really a true measure of contentment, when people can see it and they can feel it, and you don't have to tell them. They can feel you happy. They can feel you content. They can feel you're satisfied with things, and you never have to say a word. It's implied by your behavior. It's implied by your countenance. It's implied by just the way you look, by your smile. It's just implied without you ever having to say a word. Do you know sometimes wealth is like that? If a man drives up in a Rolls Royce, you ain't got to ask him if he's doing well. Now, he may not be, but it is implied that he is doing well. He may be in debt up to his neck, but generally if a man or a woman, if someone pulls up in a brand new Rolls Royce, they don't have to say a word about their financial condition. The minute it's tacit, it is implied without speaking. If someone lands at the airport and they get out of their own private jet, it is implied without them ever having to say a word that their finances are in some pretty good shape. It's implied. That's the meaning of the word tacit. Well, what about your contentment? What about your joy? Can people feel and see your joy without you ever having to tell them? You know, some people are just what they call bubbly. You can feel their spirit. When you get around them, you just get this warm glow. You can feel their joy out of life, and they'll never tell you they're happy, but you can feel it. It's tacit. And this is the type of contentment that we should all strive for, where our light shines without us ever having to tell anyone. Luke chapter 10, beginning at verse 17, the NIV version. The 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. He replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Now, the thing about this is, your name written in heaven, nobody has ever seen that. Nobody has seen the book of life. You don't know whether your name written in there or not. But if you have done what God has told you to do, if you've been in communication with him, if you've accepted his son Jesus as the Christ, if you have done those things, it's tacitly implied without you ever seeing the book. And here Jesus is saying, don't even rejoice in this other stuff that nothing can harm you. Don't even rejoice in the stuff that you have power over the demons and the other spirits. You rejoice that your name is written in the book of life, that your names are written in heaven. See, all of the stuff that the world will have us being joyful over, you can generally see. You cannot see that your name is written in the book of life, but you can feel it. And when you're walking with God, there's something about it. See, even though Jesus has said, look, he said, basically what Jesus says, he says, nothing will harm you. When your name is written in the book of life, you don't even care if something does harm you because your name is written in the book of life. And you know if your name is written in the book of life, that's why when I had my incident, when I could have died, it just didn't bother me. Because I feel, now I've not seen the book, but I just feel it's there. I feel Nathaniel Hawthorne Bronner Jr. is written in the book of life. And as long as my name is written in the book of life, I'm not worried about anything because the worst that can happen to me on this earth is I die. That's the worst that can happen to me on this earth is that I will die. And if I die, if my name is written in the book of life, I'm going on to something far greater because I'm going to be honest with you people, there's some stuff down here. There are some battles and some wars and some and these. The Bible says you'll have a new incorruptible body. My body's in real good shape, but I got some issues with this body. Ringo was working us out the other day, and we were doing back and buys, and the next day, Ringo done pulled something in my back. So I'm sitting here, in my back, I had this upper, it's an upper muscle right below the shoulder, and somehow Ringo just had, oh, you can do some more, and I did what Ringo said do, and I done yanked something in my back. So it had gotten to the point where it was hurting so much, I couldn't even hardly open the door. Do you know the value of having just an this body corruptible, and it break, and it hurt, and stuff can happen to it. And sometimes the older you get to be, the more stuff, a little bit, just like a car. You know, when you get 200,000 miles on a car, stuff go to happening to it. Even if you take an excellent care of it, you start getting these little creaks and these little stuff go to happening to it. Do you know what it's like just to have an incorruptible body that doesn't get any aches, it doesn't get any pain, that doesn't break down, just to have an incorruptible body? That's what's waiting on you when your name is written in heaven. And Jesus said, don't rejoice about all that other stuff. You rejoice because your name is written in heaven. But that is something that is tacit because nobody has spoken that to you, that your name is written in it. You got to just, it's got to be implied. You got to know it. Like the old preacher said, you got to know it in your knower. You got to just know it. You've got to know that your name is written there. And when you do, that thing brings a peace and that brings a joy because no matter what happens on this earth, You know this is only here for a small time, and this is not your final destination. Your destination is another place that has an incorruptible body, a brand new body. And that makes a difference. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm going to enjoy myself to the limit here, and I'm going to spend as much time as I can with you all. But I know I've got to leave it. And I know there's a joy just in that knowledge. But I have not seen the book. And it has neither been written nor spoken to me. It's tacit. So when you have that kind of tacit knowledge, it makes a difference just in how you handle things. And sometimes even tacit basically means the unspoken. It's the unspoken things of life. And sometimes people don't even understand what you say, but they will always understand how you make them feel. It's implied. There's a force with that. And sometimes just even our cognizance of how do we make people feel? How does our word, how is it implied to their spirits? How do we make people feel? And I've had to try to become increasingly aware of how do I make people feel. Sometimes you just can't tell just the blunt truth all the time. And it's a balance between giving people information and making them feel good. Because sometimes the information don't make you feel good. So it's a balance. And I'm working on struggling with how do I, whatever I say, it'll bring a warmth to your soul, yet knowledge to your head, and hopefully a change in your heart. How do I become where I can speak and have words, but have words that people will feel more than just understand? That's why I read that first verse by Jesus. He said, folks said, we don't even understand what you mean, Lord. There's a lot of stuff, folks. It's some stuff Jesus talked about. To be honest, I don't understand. I read this verse over and over. What does he mean by that? And it's still difficult to understand. But if you were around Jesus, he made you feel a certain way. It was that way with tacit understanding. Sometimes it's not the words, it's the tone. The tone makes a difference. And the tone often carries more meaning than the actual words. Psychologists say the majority of our communication is actually through gesture and tone, not actual words, especially when it is interpersonal. Having someone tell you, you can just, just a hello can transfer all kind of emotion. Hello. Just can transfer all kind of emotion. Hey! It just makes a world of difference. And just that, and see, hey is not even the more proper word. Somebody, hello, hey! And just when somebody does that, there's a vibe that goes through, and you just feel so good that they are so glad to see you. It's why they say often dogs are a man's best friend. I kind of understand that. We've got 2 dogs at the house. My son Josie, he bought a dog, and the other dog is a stray. And Josie says that dog is he said that is the best investment I have ever made. When he comes home, the dog's tail just a wag, and the dog jump up on the dog, just licking off. Dog just be so glad to see him. And the other dog we have that's a stray, grown up big. Now that dog, he just jumps he just so, and they cannot talk. They cannot say a word. They have no facility of language whatsoever. But there's something about when them dogs see, and I got a cat, and when my cat hears my voice, and my wife said, your cat when you get in the garage, your cat go to whining. She said, how does the cat know you in the garage and you can, because somebody, they just know. And they be so glad to see you, and they cannot talk. But you feel so good because you know this dog and you know this cat are so glad to see you. And it's just with their expression. It's tacit, It's understood without words. God is like that with you. When you go to communicate with him, he's glad to see you. He's glad to hear from you. Because sometimes he hadn't heard from us in a long time. So imagine if we can change our behavior so that we communicate tacitly without words. And when you look at somebody, just in your voice, your greeting, just in your smile, just in your eye contact. You know, listening says a whole lot. My wife accuses me a lot of time about multitasking. When she's talking and like I'm looking doing something else, which oftentimes after about 5 minutes I will be. And she said, "You ain't listening to me." And I said, "Sweetheart, this is what you just said." And I repeated exactly. "That ain't what I mean. You just ain't listening to me." Yeah, you heard it. Yeah, you can repeat it, but you're not listening to me. So sometimes just even your attention is a tacit statement. When them dogs, they give you full attention. Nothing else distracts them. They give you full attention when you walk in the door. You are their whole world. Suppose we could be like that to somebody else, where it is implied, not in what we say, but how we behave. And it becomes a language that is beyond what we say. I'm just going to even close my notes. I'm just hearing God say, just close your notes right now. And I want us to learn to just even focus on what the psychologists simply call nonverbal communication. Now, you got on your mask, so you can't, but I want you to, and see, that's one of the things that masks have done. They take away the smile because, but I want you to just look at the person, and I want you to just tell them, "Hey," and I want them to be able to feel it. And they can't see your smile, but I want them to be able, that you're really glad to see them. Go ahead. And you see how much that lifted the vibe in the room? Just from, and see, I want you to leave this church and just, if you don't get anything from this sermon today, but nothing but, "Hey," I mean, and just put a big smile and just the energy of, "Hey," and they'll be so glad. Why are they so glad to see me? Right? But it will warm them up. So just in your greeting, without the power being in the words, the power is in the tone and in the emotion behind it. And when you get to the point where you start greeting people and they start feeling that, Gaylen has that, she has that type of vibration. Every time you see Gaylen, she just got this big smile and you can just feel it. It's just so warm to you. You want to become like that. So it's implied just in your tone and just in your vibration. There's nothing but "Hey." And this will change the other person, and it changes you because you eventually get back what you put out. And it needs to be implied without the words. And just the smile, and just the tone, and just the vibration. So much of our life now is being mechanized, and it goes through text and email and video chat. And that's one of the dangers of the current world situation, is that it puts people in isolation. And because they cannot communicate other than words or text, it strips away the emotion, it strips away the vision, it strips away the touch. All of the stuff. Sometimes just a good hug says a whole lot. Somebody come up and give you a good hug, it says a whole lot. And a lot of times it's a whole volume communicated just in that hug. When a pandemic is going on, you can't hug. So all of this stuff is stripping away our social and human connection. That's not a part of the spoken. It is a part of the implied. It is a part of the tacit. And we've got to do what we can do to get it back. And I want all of y'all just to make a call today. Call somebody. And when they answer the phone, just say, hey! And I can guarantee you it's going to change them and it's going to change you. It will be implied in just the vibration of what you say. I thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word. You can go to brothersoftheword.com and you can get the entire series and listen to it absolutely free of charge. This is a series called Contentment, and today, Tacit, implied without being spoken. Hey! Thank you for joining us today at Brothers of the Word, because, brother, you need the Word. Brothers of